工智能。 I'm ShinWei from Credit Suisse. I will be acting as the moderator for this session. Our topic today is investment in Web3 hype or science? We're pleased to have with us today a panel of distinguished guest speakers with a multitude of experience in Web3 space and deep insights to share on various aspects of investing in Web3. So first, let me introduce our guest speakers today. We have Milton Santiago, Global Head of Digital Services at Silicon Valley Bank; Haseeb Qureshi, Managing Partner from Dragonfly Capital; and Dr. Xiao Feng, who is Chairman of HashKey Group. Okay, so hi guys, thank you very much for joining us today. I am thinking of starting off with a couple of rapid fire questions, and maybe you can each share your responses to them. Okay, so the first question is, how long have you been looking at investments in Web3, and what first inspired you to get involved in the space? Maybe Haseeb can start.
Sure, I'm happy to. So looking actively at Web3 as an investor since 2017, so basically
Good
beginning of the
afternoon.
last cycle.
I'm ShinWei from Credit Suisse. I will be acting as the moderator for this session. Our topic today is investment in Web3 hype or science? We're pleased to have with us today a panel of distinguished guest speakers with a multitude of experience in Web3 space and deep insights to share on various aspects of investing in Web3. So first, let me introduce our guest speakers today. We have Milton Santiago, Global Head of Digital Services at Silicon Valley Bank; Haseeb Qureshi, Managing Partner from Dragonfly Capital; and Dr. Xiao Feng, who is Chairman of HashKey Group. Okay, so hi guys, thank you very much for joining us today. I am thinking of starting off with a couple of rapid fire questions, and maybe you can each share your responses to them. Okay, so the first question is, how long have you been looking at investments in Web3, and what first inspired you to get involved in the space? Maybe Haseeb can start.
Sure, I'm happy to. So I've been looking actively at Web3 as an investor since 2017, so basically the beginning of the last cycle. At that time, I think what the impetus for me was that, so I'd known about Bitcoin for a very long time, back before I ever got into the tech industry. But I didn't really understand it. To me at the time, it seemed like a kind of weird way to buy shady things online. It was a cool computer science idea, but I didn't really get the broader macroeconomic and geopolitical impact that Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies would end up having. At the time, I was working at Airbnb as a software engineer. I was working on payments fraud, and I learned a lot about payments. And the thing that I realized working a lot on payments at an international company like Airbnb is that the global payment system is an absolute piece of crap. It's just a system that's not really designed for the world that we live in today. It's not designed for a world that is 24/7, that is global and globalized, that lives primarily in digital spaces like the internet. It was built basically 50 plus years ago. And as an engineer, when you see a system that's so broken, that's kind of held together with duct tape, that people find all these weird hacks and different ways to make it work for the actual use cases they have, as an engineer, your instinct is that, oh, we should throw this away and we should start over. And we should build something that actually responds to the needs and constraints of the world we live in. And I realized that that's what crypto was. Crypto was a bunch of engineers and computer scientists and cryptographers, and, game theorists who got together and tried to reinvent money with primitives that we have today that we didn't have 50 years ago. And some of these experiments are crazy. A lot of them obviously don't work, but some of these experiments I think are going to end up changing the future of money. And that's what convinced me to come full-time in the space and dedicate my career to this.
Awesome. Maybe Milton?
Yeah, I'll jump on Haseeb, as your comments because I can relate wholeheartedly to it. 20-something years, I have been in the payment space, dealing with what you just experienced and expressed. And you're absolutely right. For me, as I've looked at Web3, I've looked at crypto, it's been really about more than 10 years, really tinkering, playing more as someone who wants to experiment and literally looking at what you are looking at. But not just the fact that the payment systems, the money movement platforms that we have today are so limited and also based on archaic technology, message size, packet size, just everything that's associated with it. But it was also about accessibility. in the banking community and being a financial services guy, there is a community of people who are unbanked, people who are not able to get into the banking system for whatever reason. And what I found is that when you think about cryptocurrency, it evens out the playing field for everyone. It is really something that is highly accessible. It is also something that really drives a rapid exchange of information. And more than just cryptocurrency, it is also the area of secure document exchange. So when you really think about NFTs, like I really started looking at and understanding NFTs, and I'm talking about NFTs, not the function of the art, not the apes, because that's one part of it, but really it was about how do two organizations, let's say in a trade finance model, leverage an NFT to create authenticity when it comes to a transaction. How can that be leveraged? And how can that create trust? And I'd say that my focus in Web3 really started picking up during the pandemic. You had more time at home, you had more time to study. And let's face it, if you really look at what many of the analysts are saying, the adoption of Web3, the adoption of even AR started to catapult or go upwards during the pandemic, right? In many areas, when you really think about what's happening because of so many people being at home. So very similar to Haseeb, your comments on the financial side, document exchange, contracts, and then really focused on this during the pandemic period.
Okay, so pandemic period. Dr. Xiao Feng, what's your experience?
我从2014年开始研究，从研究比特币的白皮书，来开始也和 Web3 发生了一些接触。15年开始，我发起了一个专门投资在 blockchain 方面的基金，叫分布式。因此从那时候开始接触到 Web3。那 Web3 吸引我的地方，就是那种科技所带来的那种颠覆感。对，当你去阅读比特币的白皮书，或者说以太坊的白皮书的时候，你会看见区块链非常精妙的把非常多的科学技术、密码学、网络技术等非常多的东西，数学把它们组合在一起，是一个非常精妙的一个科学技术的一个组合创新，这点是非常吸引人的。在这之前，我没有发现过有哪一个商业创新是依靠这么多的技术科技把它组合在一起来创造一个完全新的一个这样的 system， 一个这样的系统，这是非常非常吸引我的。在我看来 ，Web2 的 Web3， 有一点像是工业革命时期的发生在英国的机械化。工业革命最早是机械化，是吧？蒸汽机也好，纺织机械也好，然后到19世纪末、20世纪初，在美国发生了电气化，电灯、电话、电报、无线电等等，是吧？这都是工业革命，但是呢，它在范式上是有非常大的不同的。所以，互联网和区块链 Web2 和 Web3， 它确实可以给你带来一种颠覆感，这是给我一个非常大的一个吸引，让我加入到这里面来。
OK， 所以你2014、2015年已经在这个行业里面了，很早。OK， so my next question is, if you could use one word to describe your latest thoughts about the recent developments in the Web3 space, what would it be and why? Maybe Haseeb go first.
Sure, I'll go first. One word to describe my latest thoughts. So I mean, it's macro, I guess would be one word that I'd use to describe my latest thoughts. I mean, basically since November, we've seen this entirely different macro environment coming and beating down on all risk assets. Crypto, of course, is the quintessential risk asset. So it's been just at the center of the macro firestorm that's been hitting almost every asset class. And at this point, I mean, we just saw the Fed raise rates once again, and markets are kind of trying to digest what exactly is going on. And crypto is no different at this point. You know, when I wake up in the morning and I want to know what crypto is doing, generally I check the Wall Street Journal, and you know, you see what the Nasdaq did, you probably know what crypto did that day. I think there's going to be some time until we get out of this macro environment and there's some return to normalcy, and I think crypto can get some room to breathe again. But I think until we get past this macro instability, this is going to be what crypto looks like for probably the next 6 to 12 months.
Okay, so the word is macro. Milton, what's your word?
Education.
Okay.
And I'd say that what I've seen over the last 6 months is a hunger and an appetite of people in all classes, in all lifestyles, consumers, business people, executive, who want to know more about this space and are really driven to understand how this could transform their business. If I do a lot of reading, and 82%, I remember an article that I read that said that 82% of CEOs felt that Web3, cryptocurrencies, the metaverse is something they needed to invest in now and over the next 3 years, right? So there is a voracious appetite to learn more, to how can they during this time where we have advancements in speed. If you think about the internet speeds that we have now, if you think about the cell phone speeds with also 5G, they enable a form of AI, Web3, AR that we never had before. Like the phone that you have in your pocket, something like this, that can become something like this, that can have so much that could provide so much value and immersive experience that not only to do business, but to express yourself and to share is changing the way we communicate, and it's changing the way we do business. And that appetite is just, every single person I talk to, every single person that understands my background asks me, what should I think about when it comes to Web3, crypto, metaverse, and how could this influence my business? So it's education.
Education. Dr. Xiao Feng, what is your word?
好的，如果叫我用一个新的词汇来描绘 Web3 为投资的新的展望的话呢，我用一个词叫应用。应用，对，在这之前，在我们或者2022年之前，我们更多的 Web3 的投资是集中在基础设施方面。但是当以太坊通过这次 merge， 在未来2-3年之内，它的 TPS 是它的性能能够达到每秒10万笔或者说50万笔的时候，那么应用的大爆发，就大规模的应用就具备了所有的技术基础。因此我的预测，未来2-3年之后会进入一个从基础设施的投资阶段进入到应用投资阶段。那么这个时候我觉得会类似于像我们用手机那个阶段一样。当你在上个世纪90年代的时候，你使用手机的时候，你会很在乎谁是你的电信运营服务提供商，是吧？因为那个时候你只用手机，只是打电话而已，是吧？但是当到2010年的时候，你仍然是那个电信运营服务商，你是他的客户，他为你提供上网的服务，但是你已经不在乎哪一个电信运营商或者你在哪一个电信网络上来上网，你在乎的是各种各样的 app 好不好用，对吧？微信也好 Twitter 也好 Facebook 也好，不同的 app 你会在意选择，你不会在意再去花很大的精力去选择一个电信运营商。那么到 Web3 到今天，当基础设施的投资或基础设施的建设进入到了一个晚期或者尾声的时候，我相信像各种公链，他们的声音或者说我们将来投资的主要的东西就不再是他们会下沉成为基础设施，而我们会把眼光、把资金更多的投放在各种各样的应用上头。所以我选应用这样一个词汇对未来的一个展望。
So 应用 application. Actually that flows very well into my next question. Dr. Xiao, 我下一个问题我想问你，就是 跟你刚刚说的那个是有一点关联的，就是现在我们看整个世界 like across the world venture capitalists are pouring billions of dollars into Web3. So you are Dr. Xiao, you are mainly based in Asia, but you have been an active investor of Web3 across the world. Based on your observations, especially in the US and Asian markets, why is there so much interest in this space, and where are the money going to exactly? What is everyone in?
我觉得里面一个最重要的背景是互联网，叫 Web2 带来的。Web2 的主要的成功的地方，一个是在北美，一个是在亚洲的中国。你可以看排名前15大的互联网平台，其实主要都在美国和中国。那么自然的，这是一个非常重要的积累。没有 Web2 的积累，就不可能有 Web3 的。那么没有发生过 Web2 革命的地方，我估计也很难发生 Web3 的革命，因为人在 Web2 成功的地方，钱也主要的，资金也主要的在这个两个地方积累，这就导致你看到在美国和在亚洲的中国，那么有数十亿美元投在 Web3 这个领域里面来。但是我仍然认为，目前为止真正的投资在 Web3 这个领域里面的人，还是一些先行者。大量的机构投资者并没有进到这个里边来。那么这些先行者有一个共同的特点，就是他们都是技术革命的信仰者，都是信仰技术科技会带来颠覆式革命，都有这么一个信仰在，这是他们的普遍的一个标签。那么到目前为止，虽然发生了数十亿美元的投资，但是这些钱还都是基本上投入在一些基础设施上面，或者说 DeFi 这样一些基础设施上面。我觉得从未来来看 ，Web3 的投资会从几十亿美元到几百亿美元，甚至几千亿美元。基础设施的建设，我仍然认为基本上已经接近尾声了。将来在应用层面的投资，实际上它可以容纳的资金会更大，会几百亿美元，甚至从资金的需求角度来说，会需要几百亿美元，甚至几千亿美元来支撑整个应用层的一个发展，对吧？将来的投资，我觉得资金也会集中在应用层。这就好像互联网一样，最早的上个世纪90年代，在2000年之前，当整个互联网属于基础设施建设阶段的时候，它可能也只能容纳几十亿美元的投资。但是到2010年，随着移动互联网、智能手机和 App Store 是吧？用 App 这种方式来上网，而不是用浏览器和网页来上网的时候，应用就大爆发了。应用大爆发，我们就看见所有的 Web2 的投资从可能几亿美元、10亿美元变成几十亿美元、几百亿美元，任何一个 case 都是几十亿美元、几百亿美元的这样一个投资。然后估值从2010年之后，互联网平台的估值就上升到了1000亿美元、万亿美元，那当然就可以容纳更多的钱。这是我个人看法。
你提到的一些点应该已经回答了我下几个要问的问题。So I think a lot of the points that Dr. Xiao made is quite relevant to what I'm going to ask next. So for example, he made a point on there being a lot of money that is that still needs to go into the industry to support the infrastructure development and everything. So maybe the next question is for Haseeb. Looking at valuation levels, do you think too much money has gone into the space already? And at this point, do you think it is over or underinvested?
It's a tricky question. I think the question of has there been too much money invested? If you look into sort of the return, folks investing money in January, right? Anybody who's investing money in January has lost money because the entire industry has gone down, as is almost every asset class, right? If you were investing money into tech, generally in January, that money is also down quite a lot. Now you could argue that, okay, well, that's a sign that people were putting in too much money into these assets. I think the right way to think about it is that there's an adjustment of the price of risk because of interest rate and because of macro. The question of what is the right amount of money that is entering into the space, the reality about crypto, part of what makes it so powerful, and Web3 generally, is that Web3 is pure software innovation. And pure software innovation generally means that your cost structure is extremely slim. It doesn't require a lot of capital. You don't need to build plants. You don't need to manufacture anything. You don't need, we're not investing a ton into hardware for the most part. And so that makes the space very, very capital efficient. Now, there is, of course, a lot of R&D work that needs to get funded. And what we've seen for the most part is that as the valuations have come down over the last 6 months, a lot of the later stage capital that was really crowding the market late last year. So late last year, I was talking a lot about how I felt there was way too much money in the space, and teams that really didn't need to raise as much capital as they did ended up becoming overfunded. A lot of that growth capital is pulled back, right? So if you look at the big groups that were kind of throwing money at the top, so folks like SoftBank and Tiger and Co2 and a lot of these players, they've pulled back. And what you have left is that most of the capital that's still investing into crypto are the crypto native investors who spend all their time in this industry, who understand very deeply the technology and have better ability to discriminate where exactly is the R&D money being well spent and where is it being malinvested. So I think in the long run, to Dr. Feng's point, in the long run, there are a ton of applications that need to get built, but they have to get built at the right time with the right level of resources. Giving people a bunch of money right now when the infrastructure is not fully in place yet is mostly going to result in the money sitting around, not really doing anything useful. And so I think that pipelining of investments is very, very important. It's very easy to make bad investments in Web3, which is part of why it's so difficult to invest in this industry.
Okay, you made a very good point. So I guess, like you mentioned, that there's a lot of money, I guess, investments that still need to be made on the infrastructure development level. So
that's right.
Like there are so many people going into the space right now. So I guess the question for Milton, if you can take this next, is it hype ahead of time? Do you think that for going into a space right now, is it the right time? Should we be waiting a few more years for the sector to be more ripe, the technology to be there, the infrastructure to be there? Or should we go in at a later stage even, like a lot of investors at the pre-seed rounds, should they wait a few more rounds and then go in?
Yeah, so I'm a technologist at heart, and probably my heart is going to be bleeding by me saying this, because I love technology. I love implementing new things that create efficiency, but creating new and investing in technology that doesn't solve a problem and doesn't meet a consumer need is never successful, right? Technology that is being implemented ahead of its time. History shows that there's been technology that was ahead of its time and it never really took off. Yet 10, 20 years later, that same idea is refined, perfected, or using more modern technology is incredibly successful. So to answer that question, we have to really think about consumer sentiment. We have to think about the demand that we see in the market. I'd say that it's not hype. I'd say right now is the perfect time to invest. And if we were to think about Bitcoin and how people felt when Bitcoin was $67,000, and how many people said, I wish I would have gotten in when it was 13. And I said, I should have bought more. I should have had more. And then when it plummeted again and the market corrected itself, there are still people that are buying in, and there are still people that are investing in. There's so many different projects out there that you see that are raising capital, because today, I do believe it's the right time. And let me give you an example. If we were to think about Sandbox, right? Sandbox is one of the largest virtual world platforms on the market. Over 65,000 transactions, right? Assets at the time, and now things have changed because it's like the housing economy. One thing that's really interesting about the Web3 space is that, and Haseeb, you mentioned that about all you now have to look at is the real market to see how the virtual market is acting. So we're starting to see kind of like that connection. But there was a time where virtual land was worth 350 million. Think about that. If you had a house next to this bear, you could have a mega mansion. It was worth so much money. Real estate, right? We're talking about 21,000 real estate transactions were taking place, over $110 million, according to a lot of articles out there. So you saw this demand, and the demand hasn't changed, but we have to really think about like where should we put the investment? Because when you think about Web3, there's a term that's really used, which is the creative economy, right? And Web3, depending on where you're going to play, is it going to be in a crypto space? Is it going to be a DAO space? Is it going to be in, let's say, facilitating a specific service? And I brought up an example, and I just want to share with you a number, something that I had been researching. We talked about the pandemic. Adoption of augmented reality during the pandemic increased 32%, right? And then the sentiment is that 69% of consumers think that AR is the future of shopping, right? That's Web3, semantic web. It's about immersion. It's about you being able to not only go see how you would think an outfit looks on you, but actually experiencing what it looks on you, right? Being able to take a picture and being able to see it on you. Not only being able to see it on you, but being able to share it, right? Being able to get comments about it. So this new way of doing business, this new way, and because there's commerce that's being generated, this new way of enabling experiences is not going to go away. The technology is at the right maturity, but what I would say is still lacking, and Haseeb had mentioned this as well. I think that it is in the investment space. It's not just about an investment in the technology, but there has to be an investment in the standards, right? When I think about Web 3.0, and I think about all the different, for example, we talked about MetaMask and being able to use, let's say like a MetaMask type application to be able to move funds anywhere around the world. It is still very difficult for a consumer to be able to understand what's on an Avalanche network, what's on, again, an Ethereum network. How do you transact? What happens if you send money in through the wrong network, and how do you recover the funds? Standards are something that require significant investment. And the last thing I will say is this, and this is why I think that the opportunity to invest in Web3 is important and now. How many of you remember the telephone book? The yellow pages, right? Do they exist? Think about this. How many of you remember the Encyclopedia Britannica? It was a staple thing. You would come to a house, and if you saw an encyclopedia, it meant that the family could be considered wealthy. It could be that you were investing in knowledge, right? Knowledge is still present, but it's no longer accessible on paper. The way you find a business is no longer in yellow pages. It's actually online. So I would ask, is anyone watching this webcast, is if you think about how disruptive things are, how things went from yellow pages to online, how knowledge went from tomes that were static, old, smelly, and never changed to now real-time online and updated, think about what this space means to you. Just saying that, I get chills. I literally get chills because I think that the future in this space is absolutely exciting and amazing. And if I had to bet, gamble, or invest, I'd say the time is now.
That was very excellent insights, Milton. Thanks a lot. I guess then the next question we have is on investments in Web3. Like, there are so many opportunities, like you mentioned. Milton mentioned that like the technology that is ripe and everything. Maybe Haseeb, the question is, given that there are so many opportunities in the space right now, how do we even begin thinking about investments in Web3? What would you look out for? Which space, and how would you evaluate them?
It's a tough question to answer generally, because it's like trying to explain to somebody everything that you do. It's hard to give a few nuggets, but I'll try my best. The first thing I would say is that the one thing that's very clear, and it becomes very clear at the end of every bull cycle in crypto, is every bull cycle ends up revealing the weaknesses of the technology and the infrastructure at any given stage. And generally speaking, the applications that end up allowing crypto to overcome its weaknesses are also the ones that enable the next cycle of innovation. So if you look back at 2018, what were the biggest applications that really enabled this cycle of crypto? I'd say the three big applications were probably OpenSea, Uniswap, and Solana. The three of them were also the three probably single best investments of this vintage. All three of them solved a big giant problem that enabled a whole new category of applications, right? So Solana enabled much faster, super high throughput, super cheap applications. OpenSea allowed free trading of NFTs and liquidity around NFTs to really aggregate. And of course, Uniswap allowed the re-envisioning of how tokens might be traded on chain. All three of these were tackling markets that at the time were very small. People didn't really understand at that time how important DeFi was going to be. DeFi wasn't coined when Uniswap first launched. NFTs were tiny when OpenSea first launched back in 2018. The term NFT was not even widely popularized at that time. And of course, Solana launched at a time when blockchains were in a bear market. Nobody cared about what was happening on chain back when Solana launched. Fees were not that high when Solana first launched. But all three of these end up pushing the possibilities forward for what could be done on top of decentralized applications. And that to me is what you want to look for in a bear market. You want to look for things that push the possibility space forward and solve the really big problems that have been revealed in the last market. So some of these points were mentioned earlier, like what are the big problems that are revealed today in crypto? I'd say, this is not an exhaustive list, but I'd say some of the big ones are interoperability. You're talking about, earlier, Milton, you were talking about Avalanche versus Ethereum versus Solana. How do I know which ones I'm interacting on? There's got to be ways to make all this stuff easier for consumers. Usability is still really bad. Whoever solves that is going to win a big prize. Scalability is still a big problem. Privacy is a big problem. Identity is a big problem. Once we build primitives that can solve some of these issues, it opens up a new class of applications that can now be built on top of these new primitives. So to Dr. Feng's point, it's hard to put money to work when the applications are still gated behind these core primitives that need to get built. But once somebody builds them, the prize is going to be very big. Once they're in place, and you can have a new, these problems become like platforms that you can start building on top of. And that's where I think a lot of the value is going to accrue as crypto continues to evolve. But the one thing that gives me confidence about crypto is that I think it's important to remember crypto is all technology. And technology is different from companies, it's different from institutions, because companies get old, they get worse over time. Institutions get old, they get worse over time. Technology only ever improves. And so everything that exists today in crypto, all the things you see that's, wow, this is so slow, this is so broken, the fees are so high, every single year, all these things keep getting better. And that to me is what is so exciting about being in the space, is having the confidence that the technology is only going to move in one direction, which is becoming better, faster, and cheaper.
Okay. Wow, I really want to expand on a few of the points that you mentioned just now. I guess I'm gonna ask the next question relating to investments. I say we already have say we are already looking at some investment opportunities. More on the mechanics side. I'll direct this question to Dr. Xiao, if possible. What are some of the investment or deal structure considerations that you would have specifically for investing in this space? Some examples maybe are there typical like lockup periods, or how do you think about exits and exit protections?
OK， 谢谢。Web2 和 Web3 从投资角度来说呢，是有非常大的一个区别。Web2 它仍然是属于基于一个传统的资本主义制度，叫 shareholder。对 Web3 里边，其实这个 shareholder 这个制度已经不存在了。在 Web3 里边，更多的是叫 stakeholder 利益相关者的一个资本制度。所以你作为投资者在里面扮演的角色，你要好好的设计，要忘掉你 Web2 的那些经验或者你的做法，更多的在 stakeholder 的这样一个制度之下去扮演你的角色。就是你要努力的把自己扮演成为把自己变成一个 stakeholder， 是一个参与者，是其中这个项目的一个发起人，而不再是一个单独的 shareholder 这样一个角色。 这是我们在考虑投资的时候，一个是对我们自己本身我们作为投资者，我们的角色的一个设定。同时呢，也是我们考虑我们投不投某一个 Web3 的项目的一个最核心的一个考量，就你是不是真正的建立一套对 stakeholder 非常友好的这样一整套的治理架构。那这个治理架构包括了你是不是真的在 blockchain 上，在区块链上运行你的项目，你的这个 Web3， 你是不是通过智能合约来建立一套商业规则，对吧？来保证这个商业规则的可行性。同时，第三点，你是不是真的使用了去中心化的一个治理机制？这3点确保了，那是我如果它符合这3点，那才是我们进入到我们的一个投资的一个筛选池。这是我们特别强调的一点。那么在这样一个情况之下呢，我们从我们的投资来说，我们对于锁定期呀这些呢，我们不是我们主要的考量的一个因素。因为你如果也是其中的一个 staking holder， 那么你参与到这个事情里面来，那么你对锁定期就不会有这么高的要求，就这么高的一个要求了。那其实不管怎么样，在 Web3 里面，即使有锁定期的这样一些投资项目，它那个给你提供的变现机会的期限，其实比 Web2 里面的那种股权 VC 投资已经要短的很多。基本上一个周期，在 Web2 时代，你可能是8年到10年的一个变现周期，是吧？投资周期吧。那么在 Web3 里面，基本上在3年左右，已经可以通过 tokenization 让你可以逐步的一个变现，所以已经是一个非常好的一个投资条件。谢谢。
I think Dr. Xiao made pretty good points on lockup, I guess, being not really the main point when we're looking at investments in Web3. I mean, even if there are lockups, most investors probably aren't looking at exiting so soon, right? As soon as the lockup expires, this is nascent, quickly developing space, and I guess most investors may be interested to stay for the long term, if possible. I don't know, like Haseeb, Milton, do you have any points to add on this?
Yeah, I think there's a spectrum, of course, in crypto. Obviously, if you're buying assets that are available in the open market, you're investing without a lockup. Generally speaking, if you're investing into something that is pre-launch, the very best projects actually have quite long lockup periods because they know that they can afford to have investors who are very long-term committed. For us at Dragonfly, generally speaking, we don't tend to invest in projects that have less than a 4-year vesting period. So we want to see the project show a long-term commitment to wanting to build something that's going to last and it's going to have a lasting impact. I think every cycle you see firms that are very short-termist, especially, crypto has a reputation for fast money and things like, kind of this boom bust type thing. And there's some money that you can make doing that kind of stuff, kind of getting in, getting out, kind of darting around the market. But in the long run, the real money gets made investing in things that are going to have a generational impact. And that's the way that we view crypto investing. And I think if you just look back at who's actually done well in this industry, there are a lot of people who make money in a bull market and they lose it all back in the bear market. The people who end up in the long run actually building real wealth are the people who are backing innovation for the long term and stick around to see it through. And that's the approach that we try to take at Dragonfly.
Got it. So I guess another question that is relevant when we're looking at investments in this space is, given that most of the Web3 companies are pretty early, I guess, in the investment stage, how would you try to measure their performance? Is there any metrics that you track, say on a yearly, quarterly, or even weekly basis? Milton, do you have a
Yeah, I have a position on it, and it's going to be very much in line with Dr. Xiao and also what Haseeb had mentioned. And I find that, in my opinion, these are businesses services, and there's understanding the adoption is of the product, of the solution, of the solve, be it if it is a blockchain solution, if it's a DAO solution, if it is going to be something that is operating in a metaverse type solution. You really want to understand what is the adoption. Second is user sentiment. So succeed and fail because of user sentiment. You just can't underestimate the power of marketing, of communication and value, right? So user sentiment is really important. The other thing, and this is the thing that adoption and user sentiment place, and they become very short term, especially if there's no use. So what is the utility of the solution that you're investing in? And is it solving something? What is that is solving? And again, that ties to, again, the utility of the solution, the sentiment, the adoption. And then I have two more things really well with traditional businesses, and that is the roadmap. Is there a roadmap? Short term, but we're talking long term. So the problem that you solve today, a need, or uncover an unsatisfied want tomorrow. So having a long road plan, a plan that gets communicated, that drives adoption, that drives user sentiments, right? Which is going to be, is really going to create a really solid and really solid foundation when it comes to any type of company that is focused on Web3. And then the last thing, and this is going to be brass tacks, kind of the traditional things. If you have utility, and you have a roadmap, obviously it's like, what's the revenue model look like, right? What's the profitability of the solution? At times to invest in an organization or in a solution that may not have the highest margins, but a solid user sentiment, solid utility, and a solid roadmap, it goes down to term. It becomes, instead of being a short-term win, it becomes a longer win. And there's so many examples in the market today where if you have that kind of ingredients that really deliver a very sound solution that will frankly survive any market condition, right? Because these cycles that we see have existed for years. And the companies that survive are those that really focus on those things.
Very good points. I guess that makes sense. We obviously will care about like whether this technology or anything, or that depends on what kind of questions we can address, like you mentioned. So I guess the next question that we should naturally ask is, say you're already invested in a few of the startups. How would you how do you know if you're investing in Web3? Like, how would you evaluate your investments performance as a VC? So just now the question was more on how would you evaluate the performance of maybe a Web3 company that you are potentially investing in. Now it's more on how would you evaluate your performance as I guess a VC or as an investor in this space? Haseeb, maybe.
Yeah, so investing into venture capitalists, investment management is always a relative business, meaning that you have to measure yourself relative to the benchmark. Now, what is the benchmark in crypto? And this is actually a difficult question to answer. Is the benchmark Ether? Is the benchmark altcoins generally? Is the benchmark, some basket of startups? Is it the S&P 500? Like what are you supposed to be benchmarking to if you are a crypto VC? Ultimately, that's up to the investors and up to the story that you're telling and the kind of exposures you're taking on as a VC. Generally speaking, from my perspective, at least today, when crypto is quite correlated within its own industry, Bitcoin tends to serve as the most common benchmark for most investors. And the idea is like, look, you have beta exposure to crypto. If crypto does poorly, probably startups in crypto are going to do poorly. If crypto does well, probably, crypto startups are going to do well. And Bitcoin is correlated with almost everything, and it's the most liquid asset. So most VCs tend to, because the question is like, look, if I believe in crypto, why don't I just invest in Bitcoin? Why should I bother investing into a venture capitalist? Now, over time, that's going to stop working, because over time, as the application taking on more exogenous factors and determining their growth and their valuations, there will come a day when there are metaverse applications that are growing rapidly, even when Bitcoin is shrinking. Or there will come a time when stablecoin remittances are exploding, actually, as they are right now. Stablecoins are continuing to grow, even as the Bitcoin price is going on and so on. And so I think over time this will break down. We'll have to have better answers of how exactly you measure the performance of, at least up till today, the way that it's mostly been done is benchmarking against Bitcoin or very liquid crypto assets.
Got it. Okay, very good point. Okay, so I think we're almost at the end of the session. I asked any more questions for you guys. Maybe to wrap up the session, just wanted to open Dr. Xiao, Milton, Haseeb, all of you. Are there any final mention on this subject? This topic on whether investment in Web3. Maybe just share a few words on whether how you're feeling about the upcoming year 2023.
那我是一个对 Web 短期、中期、长期都是一个乐观主义者。这是我相信它是一个科技组合创新能够带来颠覆式范式上的一个改变。它是一个范式革命，不是简单的工具，它不是简单的传统的事情做边际效益上的改善。而是带来了一场范式革命，这是我坚信的一点。所以短期、中期、长期我都很乐观。对2022年、2023年，我认为就地缘政治的动荡，这种结构性的通胀，实际上我认为像现在的比特币的目前的价格，仅就比特币也好 ，ETH 它们价格实际上是被错杀的。因为他们这些虚拟资产，比特币、ETH， 它们天然是具有抗通胀的特点，同时也具有防范地缘政治动荡的这样一个技术特点。这两个对它都具备的，但是他们目前为止，实际上这个价值并没有被市场充分的认识到。这是我的观点，谢谢。
谢谢小峰总。Milton, Haseeb, any final?
Yeah, so I guess the one thing I'll say is that this year has made me very grateful that I'm not a trader, because this is a very difficult market environment to be going in and out of markets in. I'm very fortunate that I'm a venture capitalist, and as a venture capitalist, although entrance prices obviously matter, the main thing that matters is what things are going to be worth when our fund exits. And our fund, our funds are going to be invested for a very long time, so 5 to 10 years until our funds finally fully liquidate. And so the only question I have to answer for myself is not, okay, where is the Fed going? Where are interest rates going? Where is inflation going? The question is, what's going to happen in 5 years? What's going to happen in 10 years? And to me, it's absolutely obviously clear that the secular trends that are underlying crypto are not going away. There may be macro instability, the price of risk may change, Ukraine may do this, and oil prices may do that. But at the end of the day, the digital political changes that are happening in the world are only going to accelerate over time. And this technology is going to keep getting better all the while. So that's why I'm long-term very excited and very grateful that I get to do venture.
Yeah. My part, if you Google the word innovation during recession, you will find millions and millions of articles. Innovation, transformation to take place, regardless of political climate, regardless of where we are in the economy. The basic human needs remain. And if anything, during these times, those needs become more relevant, they're more real. People kind of appreciate them more. If you think about the human need to be connected during the pandemic, many people realized how detached they were from their families and found that during the pandemic period, they got closer to their children, to their families. I think that during this recession, innovation will continue to spread, will continue to grow. And I actually think that it will thrive and gain more explosive energy than ever before. I'm very positive about the outlook in this space.
Awesome. So that's a very good end to Haseeb, Qureshi, Dr. Xiao, Feng, and Milton, Santiago for joining our session today.
Into some virtual world. In the virtual urban space, a lot of experiences can be fulfilled through a digitized form to feed back into our real life. So such a world is what we call a world integrating both real and virtual. In this virtual world, AI technologies together with AR technologies can both combine to fulfill the transfer of all the functions to fulfill the sole demonstration of the physical world. And that also will combine to form a commonwealth of the virtual world and the real world on a platform that is integrated into one system. So we have two routes. One is from virtual to real, the other is from real to virtual. From real to virtual is to digitize the real world, to re-demonstrate the upgrading of urban design. And the other way around is to convert the digital experiences into our real world before it can be felt solidly. And so what we plan to do is to really ensure the mutually reinforcing effects between these two worlds. To this end, we need to work on several different, for example, the SenseMark engine, which can fulfill the seamless integration of the virtual world and the real world. The accelerated integration and acceleration could be a very important part of the whole system. And the congregational power for AI can combine the best of both physics, humans, objects, and the real world into one system. Through the SenseTime platform construction, we are of the Metaverse. And this is what we call the seamless integration of both online worlds. So these products are already launched, including the parallel world, including the online conferencing systems, NFT, real person driven world, the AR markets, the indoor product navigation, together with the AI vehicle demonstration will also be included in the third layer. So through this launch of the hardware and also the matrix of the products, it is possible for us to combine both the culturalities, entertainment, business, and everything. Also called new entertainment and culture. We hope to put a lot of things on this platform and to expand our horizon, so then fulfill the roamings online anytime and anywhere. And also can see the 360-degree coverage, relevant elements related to the tourist destinations. And also you can see that all the memories coming from online can be offline AR trips. And these landmarks can also be identified as a mark whenever they are into the real life to identify or explore what life has to offer. So these online interactions permanently in offline environments. Against the backdrop of the IoT, we can see the AI-based landmark building to integrate together effectively with our cultural experiences. So such a combination and congregation will combine to form a what we call a new demonstration of a cultural landmarks through a new forms. For antiques, artifacts, they can also be expected to be unveiled in terms of through AI tourings, through AI explanations, and AI tour guides, and AI research and workshops. We can hope identify the relevant links to reinforce understandings and impressions of those cultural activities. New business will be a new target to be integrated system from both real and virtual. So we can enhance the understanding of the new identity, new adhesiveness, and new playing models for our members, and also through the syncing of more data and resources offline, we can have a more AR marketing environment to accommodate the brand-oriented metaverse space. A lot of different thematic events online and also in this metaverse. For conferencing and exhibitions, it can also be serving as a bridge between the real world and the virtual world, to be away from the constructions of both time and space to the greatest participation of students. So we can convert those different type of flows, even for human flows, for cargo flows, and also for time flows into one system to the benefit of all. And this can also fulfill the so-called integrated new form of a new environment and new entertainment. So these various virtual playing models and virtual figures can seek to interact with each other as part of the future new entertainment system. And these personifications of those real figures can also be brought into the new space. They will be the main stars for the interaction elements in the offline. SenseTime has also developed some NFTs for digital exhibits like IP, cultural creativities, literary works, films, IPRs for musical compositions, brand, advertising, games, entertainment, and good. Can hope to identify a platform called NFT to take good care of your exhibits and also your personal belonging in this virtual world. So they can replace the original status and a position of the real objects, and it can seek to cover as many front lines on the platform as possible. In a nutshell, through the online consultant space, through the deliverance and installation of an offline platform capability, we can seek to put everything onto one holistic platform to create what we call a so-called Lingjing space. This is a bridge of in the real world. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Beyond Web3 Summit recording. Today, we'll be talking about how can we miss all the fun in the metaverse, more specifically in SocialFi and GameFi. And before we dive into the details, I do want to go through quick introductions. So my name is Hikaru Kasai. I am the co-host at the Human and Machine podcast, where we simplify everything Web3. And then today, we do have Saro Mckenna, co-founder at AlienWorlds. Hi, Saro. Can you just give us a quick introduction?
Hi, Hikaru. Nice to be here with you and also Mable. So I'm the co-founder of Decoco, and we're the company that produced the AlienWorlds Metaverse. So AlienWorlds is the largest blockchain users. So you can see that data at dappradar.com. We were the largest blockchain game in history and have maintained in around the top 3 and currently, again, the sort of top 1 at in terms of users. We're a decentralized meta NFTs to mine the fungible token Trillium, which you then use on our competitive planet DAOs. So you'll probably be hearing about DAOs this year and in the years to come. Of course, they're already very, very significant within crypto. But in our case, DAOs are index, so teams of people playing against each other within our metaverse. Great to be here.
Awesome. And I love your background, by the way. Great. And today we also have with us Mable Jiang, Chief Revenue Officer at STEPN. Hi, Mable. Can you give us a quick introduction?
Thank you, Hikaru, to be here. Hi, everyone. My name is Mable Jiang. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at STEPN. I'm also, before joining STEPN, I was a partner at Multicoin Capital, which is a crypto-focused investment firm based in the US. Let me talk a little bit about STEPN. So STEPN is a Web3 lifestyle application with gamified and social components within it. So it's a application that partially backs blockchain, but also a lot of the fun and interesting. Really strive to encourage people to walk, jog, and run outdoor through leveraging tokenized incentives based on blockchain network. We are on Solana, on Binance Chain, as well as Ethereum. So we are one of the first Web3 apps to onboard thousands of non-crypto native users to understand the one-on-one basic of blockchain. Glad to be here. Thanks for joining.
Awesome, great. Yeah, really excited to have you both and dive into the details. So to start into the details of GameFi and SocialFi, which has been really hot in the Web3 industry, I think it's really important to kind of lay down what exactly is the meta and not, because I think a lot of people still are not entirely clear. And how are NFTs and ultimately related? So Saro, would you like to start with this?
Yeah, I love that question. And, I think the truth of the matter, we're all still arriving at a solid and stable definition of the metaverse, because there are a few different definitional components that people, are still figuring out how fundamental each of them needs to be. So the first is that a meta is a single persistent environment or space in which people can come together to interact peer-to-peer or interact directly with each other. And of course, that space is digital. It's not physical, right? So those are the main components of what a metaverse realm, rather than the physical world. It's somehow a space, and it's somehow a place in which people are contemporaneously like other, right? It's not asynchronous. So then you ask but that also includes, that could include a number of things that look and feel quite different, right? So for example, how fundamental is an AR or VR build out to the metaverse? Well, I do think that it's definitional to the concept of the metaverse that it's a space, but that space doesn't necessarily have to be sort of built out 3D VR in which you're kind of walking around in a spatial sense, right? It can be a shared community space, right? Like as people of acknowledging the existence of something that isn't entirely built out. So, I feel a sense of community becomes a shared space for the members of that community. And I actually think that might be a more powerful notion of a space we're sharing together than just an environment in which we're both there, But this is so one of the questions, how fundamental is an AR, VR build out? I think another question is, this peer-to-peer nature. So people need to be able to interact directly with each other. To us at the Open Metaverse, that's OMA 3, so some of the largest metaverse projects that have come together, OMA 3, we think that a blockchain construction is really required to be called a metaverse, because only with a blockchain construction can you have people really coming together peer-to-peer who are not simply there because a centralized platform owner has for a certain period of time there, right? So with a blockchain construction, there's a sense in which people are coming together in a peer-to-peer way in a much more immutable sense. And their identity is something that they can choose to around the metaverse. They can choose to interact with people. They can choose to transact with people. And all of that is done securely. And there isn't the ability simply for the platform to kind of take that away. So yes, I think those are some of the components of what's important about a metaverse. And I think what sort of relationship between NFTs and all of that, I think that, the kind of first application or the first thing that we're doing inside of the metaverse at scale is gaming. But in time, there are many other aspects of our lives that happen within the metaverse, including education, work of other kinds. And certainly social interaction is going to be in the metaverse, which we're already seeing through gaming. And so then you ask, so what's the role of NFTs in that? NFTs are blockchain tokens to be able to represent people's membership of a community, their actions within a game, their powers within a game. So within the gaming sort of iteration of the metaverse that we're in right now, NFTs have been extremely important. I think DAOs actually are going to be just as important because they're groups of people within the metaverse. But I think over time, the way that all of these blockchain tokens inhabit and exist within the metaverse will evolve.
Great. Yeah, lots of great points that you mentioned. And Mable, what do you think about this?
Quite a few very interesting points. So I'll just add on top of that, key thing about, like, let's focus first on blockchain part of this. So I think one of the key things that, happening within Metaverse is that a lot of the applications or protocol layers are composable to each other and interoperable with each other. Obviously, the computational layer for everything. However, in terms of the asset, when there's value transfer and value exchange, there's going to be a huge demand for blockchain simply because of the nature of a public ledger. So that's one. I think another point I wanted to emphasize is that metaverse have to be on top of blockchain. Like I said, the value capture, the value settlement will run on chain. But then, because given the restriction of computational power and whatnot, a lot of those does not require instant finality, which means like you do not really need blockchain for that. So like for the rendering part, and then a lot of the AR VR part of it, obviously I'm not an expert for that. I think those are also part of the metaverse, so to speak. I think the other thing I will mention, I think is worthwhile also emphasizing, is the peer-to-peer nature. Like everyone would have their own identity, is actually constructed by their either on-chain or off-chain credentials being stored, I guess, like a permissionless blockchain, or maybe as like a semi-permissionless storage where like there's a bunch of nodes on top. So then like people with those credentials, like they can actually have those credentials viewable on, so like there might be a bunch of different entrances for one shared metaverse, but then like everyone's identity and then all the work that they've done in the past, the credentials and whatnot, like it can all be read from different entrances and different kind of platforms. So like that goes back to my first point of interoperable and composable. So yeah, I think like these are some of the things that I wanted to add on top of the great point.
Yeah, great insights. And I think all of these innovations, technology-wise and social-wise, this is the next question. How are people actually having fun in like the digital space, the physical, or whatever that is defined? Sarah, would you like to start with this?
Yeah, I would say that one of the real kind of explosion of entrepreneurial activity that's adjacent to and within gaming right now. So, we've seen, like, as play to earn kind of developed a couple of years ago, people were taking a very entrepreneurial stake within games, collectives, figuring out how to self-organize. And I think that a lot of that, as it gets translated into a metaverse environment, what that's meaning is that communities are creating their own assets. They're finding ways to onboard new users through those types of social mechanisms. And of course, being able to transact peer-to-peer, they're doing that. So they have an incentive, they have a co-ownership stake within the metaverse, and that's why they're behaving. I mean, lots of other things are happening in the metaverse. People are developing, they're coding, they're trying new technology, they're creating, I mean, that's another kind of side of, so there's a lot of content creation, and especially novel content creation. So yeah, I mean, right now I would say that people are, I guess, pushing the boundaries of what the technology can do. But what I love to see is the way that people come together. People are just so ingenious and will find a way to add value to any system and to create things. In AlienWorlds, what we found was that, my company created the metaverse in the first place, and the core smart contracts and the sort of platform elements like the token itself, the NFT, took that forward in leaps and bounds. There's been whole companies that have been created servicing the AlienWorlds metaverse, both through data, through NFTs, their own lore. They're having competitions and battles with each other. Some of them have created like leaderboards and competitions that have even been built out a little bit technically. Some of them run very low tech type competitions, like just on Twitter. So there's like the full gamut. And I think what this shows is that people really love these metaverse environments that they're in. They feel a close sense of connection, both with the platform, but I think especially with each other. And I think that's because of the co-ownership.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fun, and people explore that. Yeah. Mabel, we would like to hear your opinions on this.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think a lot of people, it's actually a continuation of what they've been doing in the past. So like you probably know there are people already playing large or just this like what you call the script murder stories or whatever. Like those are people already playing on top of their mobile app in the traditional world. So I think what people kind of learn from also from the popularity and whatnot, like 2 years ago, is that people realize that creating rooms and hanging out together and even a visualized space is actually what's needed, especially post-COVID world. So I think, a lot of the projects that are building today, they're actually focused on the types of community to hang out with each other around a specific theme. So that's like also, I think, what Saro mentioned just now. And I think, what's also been interesting is like, for example, museums. People created museums in a bunch of existing like crypto voxels, like being one of, like you will see people actually store kind of having tours and whatnot with people in the galleries they recreated within those quote unquote metaverse. So I think those are some of the things that really allow people to go beyond the physical restriction for a period of time. People could not have the luxury to travel around the world and whatnot. So I thought that was very interesting. Other thing that we were trying to do was we were opening our merch store, but it's not just a like a simple Shopify or website. It's actually going to be rendered by a partner within their actual virtual merch store, and people just go in and they can buy. And they will have the ownership of that NFT, and the NFT is redeemed for people to get the physical merch. So I think that's like a a type of example that what you said about the hybrid model of it. So I think there's a lot of things that we can obviously leverage and go around with it. Another example is just like StockX. Like if it really just allow people to trade the receipts, they can also create NFT and allow people to just like trade NFTs, and then if will want to redeem it, like they can do it. So there's a lot of way, like even within the ways that we don't consider technically like a full-blown metaverse, they're really like just treating these ownership, the co-ownership or co-ownership for people in their life. I think that's already pretty cool. So that was my thought.
Yeah, really deep. We'll need like another session just for those details. Great. So I think a lot of what we're talking, it has to really do with the social interaction element. Now, we know social in the aspect of social media, but when you combine finance, SocialFi, the monetary incentives around it, so the next question is, how is SocialFi being impacted by the metaverse around that? Saro, please.
That's interesting. I haven't really thought about SocialFi before, because I suppose, in a sense, the converse, somebody else owning what you're producing, right? Like if people stuff, then that's adding value to a system. And I think the question is more, who's capturing that value? Is it the person themselves, or is it the platform owner? And that's really the distinction between Web 2 and Web 3. So I'm not sure I would necessarily put the emphasis so much on the FI aspect, as if the person is only involved in the system because to earn money, for example, because I think that's potentially the connotation when you put the FI suffix onto something. I think it's more about empowerment and just the next iteration of property rights, honestly, that get extended into a metaverse environment in virtue of a blockchain construction, and then everything that results from that, all of the potential and creativity that gets unleashed when you acknowledge the sort of sovereignty of people's capturing that, into the platform itself. I think one of the things that's kind of interesting is that what we saw in the like social media is that people have been pushing the boundaries of that for themselves. So influencer, right? So these are people who are like super sharers on social media, and they do manage to monetize a bit of a position for themselves through a lot of hard work, but they're sort of working against the boundaries of what's been created. It's like, it's only if they happen to be a breakout success that they are able to earn anything like a living, and whereas what we've done in Web3 sort of say that the starting point is that people just own the fruits of what they're doing, and that, beyond that, how they transfer that value around. So that doesn't mean that there aren't paid services or that everything's free or anything. Like, plenty of commercial services that get offered in the metaverse, but people themselves will choose to engage in them. And I think that creates far more creativity. I think that's the first thing, is that you just get a much more vibrant system. And this, I think, is what Facebook found when they had to, completely reimagine Meta, was that a walled garden is great at first, right? A walled garden is beautiful at the very beginning. There's like, a team of gardeners, and they're creating all these manicured environments. There's lovely fountains and beautiful flowers, and you can walk around and feel really great. A walled garden doesn't let new stuff in, right? Because it's walled, so you don't get like the new things that have been created, and not get rid of the old stuff, right? Because of that wall. And that's what systems need, is they need constant regeneration through input and out, chaotic and so on. But that's what you actually need to have a vibrant system. And what Facebook didn't really have built into their business model was that. And so they had to do this, like, move their company into Meta, whereas I think Web3 systems are probably more able, through a more gradual mechanism, just to accept new ideas and new types of tokens, new business models, new games, new ways of acting, and also to sort of that are no longer profitable or working for people.
Great. Yeah, I think the rethought is a very important aspect in Web3. Yeah, Mable, we would like to hear your opinions.
I would be actually very straightforward about SocialFi. I actually never liked the word of fi after everything. I think that's like a very mimetic way of doing things, but I think people who use this term, they don't really know what they're talking about. So like usually when I talked about our product, like we just mentioned that there's like social element instead of SocialFi. Anyhow, going back to the question about social, I think like in the first question I said, within the whole metaverse, and regardless how you define metaverse, not everything needs to be powered by blockchain that are valuable, that needs to be actually stored and have instant finality, will require blockchain settlement. Within what we are seeing today, there are a few things that actually needs or could be monetized by those, like influence being one of them, which means like maybe the social graph, like they have, that's like something that could actually be recorded by the blockchain. And also, there are a lot of actually activities that people try to do to accumulate their social relationship, but those activities, those proof of work, do not really have to be recorded every single step on chain, but rather it's just a result of it. So like I think one of the very interesting example is tokenized or NFT tokenized the emojis. So I think like potentially in the future, like we could see some of the influencers like monetizing there, and then only have like a limited number of it. Obviously, like to one extent, like you would see some people would actually rather want the NFT to be issued as many as possible, because like the wider the consensus there is, meme will be, and it's actually going to be more valuable. But at the same time, like if people are going to issue a NFT around it, you can also go the other way. So like then like it could be open source at the beginning and later on to be monetized by whoever created it. But at the same time, like widely recognized by everyone. So I think there are a lot of interesting potential things that people could explore around like anything related to social, but also like could be captured by tokenizing the specific memes or specific result of that social behavior. But I think the process of it probably will so likely to happen in a Web 2.5 one. That was a bit of my take, and I think maybe not everyone would agree to that.
Yeah, I love these, very impactful when you think about it. So I think, of course, as
I mean, I
we
actually agree with
explore.
Mabel
Oh, go
too.
ahead.
Yeah, like, so I really like Animoca Brands' definition of the metaverse, which I seem to only remember the very first part. But one of the things that they say is that it's a series of interconnected platforms, which is similar, Mabel, to what you were mentioning about the sort of composable, way in which the metaverse can be developed. And most of those platforms that are being interconnected in this definition of the metaverse are Web 2 still, right? Like Discord and Telegram are still. So, yes, we're definitely in a sort of combination of all of that. And with I would say both, I think it's important that both certain smart contracts and assets are running on a blockchain. Like in our case, a DAO is it's more than just an asset, and that is actually all running on chain. I think there's a few things that need to run on chain, maybe a little bit more than just assets. But yes, absolutely. Right now we are in a little bit of a hybrid. That's kind of it's a good thing, and it's sort of racing ahead of where the tech is, right? We don't have a single unifying technology to be able to do messaging and to do all the consent, So instead we have all these different components, and actually together they are what constitutes a person's experience of being in community in the metaverse.
Of course, yeah. And I think gaming is one of the biggest verticals that's really pushing people. So let's talk about that. How can more people participate in this GameFi, or let's just say gaming using Web3 technologies? Yeah, maybe Mable, you can start this time.
I think my take is actually quite simple. So onboarding is definitely obviously today, a lot of the experiences of onboarding, the UI UX is actually not very easy, but I think it's not just about the onboarding itself, because perspective, like helping people to create a non-custodial wallet, even teach them, the one-on-one basics of blockchain, you need to use gas to send transactions, and all those are already, I think we've done a relatively okay job. However, actually being needed for actual mass adoption is the uprise of smart contract wallet, rather than having users to kind of store their seed phrase themselves. Right now, I think there are some players of this, but there's mass opportunities for that. And then a lot of those could actually build on top of layer 2, some other alternative layer 1s, rather than the Ethereum blockchain. So I think that was my number one kind of take. I think the other thing about, to your point, GameFi instead of gaming, gaming instead of GameFi. I do think GameFi or X to Earn has their own merit to it in a certain historical period of time, because it's a very bootstrapping a lot of users within a short period of time. However, I think if you do want to keep these people within your ecosystem and whatnot, you do need to think about the question of externality. So then, it's about maybe working with external brands, or maybe with some other lifestyle applications and whatnot, to really give the users who you use the X to Earn kind of model other things to do, or actually to do something that's creating values, or at least creating values for themselves. So yeah, I think these are 2 points that I wanted to bring up.
Great. And Saro?
Yeah, completely. I mean, the first thing, a little bit, because I get asked this question a lot, what will it take for blockchain gaming to go mainstream? I mean, the first thing, you're right, most of the major blockchain gaming projects have only been around for sort of maximum 4 or 5 years. And even then, the first couple of years, they would have been quite small, So even just at a sort of basic level, we've all been growing teams, we've all been putting in place, more band to develop. Our communities have been maturing in their outlook and growing. We've been onboarding, as Mabel mentioned, hundreds of thousands of people into crypto, teaching them how to, handle a wallet and what a block explorer is, and how to meet new people in a metaverse, and sort of get to know, find their own particular grouping. All of that is sort of we've been building within the industry for a very short period of time. And of course, if you learn on top of that, as Mabel alluded to, the technical games that we're building on Ethereum. That was a major scaling challenge. That was a major onboarding challenge. Well, yeah, I mean, it was scaling challenge because of how expensive it was to transact. We were fortunate that we came kind of just when, so our gaming logic resides on the BNB chain, the Binance Smart Chain, but also importantly on Wax, the Wax blockchain, at that time completely free to onboard onto and use. Now there's some fees associated with it. It made a huge difference to our ability to scale. There is social recovery, for example, on accounts there. So, and I think that was pretty significant for our, I think that as those features become more widespread and move on to EVM chains more and more, amount of innovation happening in the EVM world is really phenomenal. So, it's all happening basically, and it's not going to take very long. Will be what we see with greater adoption. And then I think the other thing is that, of course, traditional video games are also, of course, looking at expanding into blockchain. I think the issues that they're finding, well, it's not in their business model. So it's a sort of pretty fundamental shift in mindset. They have to develop technical know-how that they don't have. A lot of blockchain stuff is not interoperable with the platforms that they're on already. I mean, even at a basic level, distribution networks are not open to crypto. We can't get onto the Play, store and so on. So there's some pretty substantial blockchain gaming is being sort of kept from those distribution channels whilst about that and trying to kind of retrofit blockchain solutions into what they already have. So yeah, I think in general, the underlying theme of what is going to be needed to help scale is just technical development and improvement and interoperability. But there's several different angles to that and happening. There's been a lot of investment into the space. So a lot of people are learning how to do this right now.
Yeah, very positive that, we're just going to keep moving forward and new things are going to constantly come out. So this is my final question. What do you think are some of the hottest or fun trends that's going to come in the metaverse? Yeah, Mable, what's your take?
Yeah, so in the previous answer, I also mentioned the smart contract wallet, so I'm not going to say that again. I do think interesting, or what's going to be probably a little bit more competitive is the decentralized rendering. I think render, the token and RNDR, they've been doing that for a little while. And we are actually also seeing other players coming into the space, going to definitely liberate a lot of the new hash power for people to, deliver to computing for the rendering part. So I think leveraging tokenized incentive networks to do that is definitely very needed for metaverse as a whole to have a step further. So I'll just leave it like that.
Yeah, I agree, and I think also, just interoperability is a major piece there, right on to, and there's interoperability at the graphical layer that Mabel's alluding to, and also at all other layers of game is built. So if it's a blockchain game, there's the assets, there's the computation, there's the gaming logic, and so on. So yes, interoperability is a major thing, and in fact, that's what has been constituted in order to try and mean metaverses, so that this vision of a single unified metaverse can begin to become more real, and that people identities, their reputation, their assets, and so on across chains. And I think for beyond that, all of this sort of usability and UX is certainly one of the things that we see and will be important in scaling.
Yeah, I think wow, that was a lot of information. That's what I can say. I do have a quick bonus question, and I'd like to ask this for those of who are new into Web3, kind of want to get in, but they have no idea where to start. What's some advice that you would give to beginners? Mable?
I think probably among everything that they would be able to interact with, the easiest place for them to just go around. Reason being, I think that's something they can easiest, with profile pictures and whatnot. I understand that's their, they can use the profile pictures as their identity, and even the consider NFT. So anything related to identity is probably the easiest place for them to to kind of start with. And then obviously through the interaction, they would know how to at least like use momentum or whatever. Like I said, they would understand the need of gas and whatnot. Like for DeFi, sometimes like you might still have to understand a little bit more about like how maybe you don't have to know reaction works for AMMs and whatnot, but still I think that's probably the next step. So yeah, that's my answer.
I think I would often learn new things better as part of a group or a community. And so that's part of the reason why we see DAOs as very significant components of a system rather than just a way of organizing part of the token supply. So, you know, if you're part of a team somewhere in East coming into, for example, the AlienWorlds Metaverse, creating a DAO and then managing that collectively is a real all of that, and it sort of gives you an automatic reason for being there because your peer group is there, has come into that. So we see that as a powerful part of people's adoption, is doing it as a team or as a group, especially a pre-existing team from outside into the metaverse.
Absolutely, I agree. Wow. Okay, so yeah, time's up. You know, if you are new to Web3, want to learn more, or even better, if you want to get hands-on, we encourage Worlds and also STEPN, and Human and Machine is also here for content. And lastly, thank you to Beyond for organizing this. And yeah, we just hope that everyone will develop and, you know, really strive for innovation and results.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Beyond Expo. And for this panel, we'll be talking about the next blue ocean for hardware companies in the metaverse. So joining us today are Mr. Suchi, who's the founder and CEO of Nreal. And also we have Mr. Alvin Wang, who's the president of HTC China. Hello, both. You know, we both go, we all three of us go way back actually to see you, albeit in online form. So why don't we start off with talking about what we've been up to lately? Because obviously in the past 2 or 3 years or so, we've all been dealing with COVID. But it's safe to say that things are starting to get back to normal. But I was wondering, have your companies been changing your strategy lately with your to VR and AR lately? Why don't we start off with Suchi? You know, I know your company's been releasing the Nreal. Well, actually, you'll be Nreal Air in the US. So, and you know, this is slightly different to the Nreal Lite, which you released in the US last November, I believe. So, tell us about what changes you've been making. Or if these changes have anything to do with COVID.
Well, okay. Actually, the entire commerce sale happens, you know, during the COVID period. It is quite challenging for us because, you know, we are relatively a smaller team, and we have to deal with, you know, countries during COVID, but we don't have enough people, or we don't have enough people locally to do so. So luckily, you know, with the help of, you know, different carriers in their countries, we'll be able to really get some strength from them to help us countries. And we do realize that, you know, because of the COVID, especially at early times, it is hard for us to go to the local stores to gather the feedbacks from the customers and to kind of assemble that, especially offline campaigns to attract different customers. But all in all, that's also an opportunity for us because people cannot go out too much, so they would love to actually browse online, especially to find out some cool gadgets. And I think VR, AR, definitely get some boost out of that because people cannot go. A lot of companies, I think, take this opportunity, and you instantly have a chance to cut the cost for those customers, try something new, and if they like it, they'll stick to it. A boost for VR and AR in general for the last couple of years, and I still consider that trend gonna keep continuing, even after the COVID period.
So would you say the adoption rate is still going up steadily despite COVID hopefully going relatively downhill, so to speak?
I think so. Yeah.
Cool. What about Alvin? Well, would you say you saw the same? I know obviously for Alvin, your main focus is in China. Tell us about what you're up to recently and what kind of adoption rate are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I can't give specifics about. I think it's clear that over the last couple of 3 years, there's two major trends, right? One is what's happening with wishing globally, and the COVID situation actually creating, I think, an acceleration for adoption and interest. So XR metaverse space, and then the other major trend is I guess the heat and hype around this metaverse concept. So the two actually coming together, I think, is creating a new inflection point, both in terms of customers' interest to adopt, as well as investors' interest, more money to work in this space, and entrepreneurs and content creators wanting to get into this space. So happening, I think it's really actually just accelerating the entire industry forward because of these two trusting around the same time. And we see similar types of added bench China as well as globally. So overall, I think we're actually quite happy with where things are headed, and we've released completely new generations of products in our Pro line, in our standalone line, and then late last our kind of thin and light, these kind of Vive Flow cameras, Vive Flow HMD devices. So now that the devices are getting to a point where they're much more accessible, much more comfortable, it really opens a class of customers that used to not be open to using these devices. And I think that's going to help in new customer base and expand the overall market. And what we also see is that right now, we started releasing standalones with the Pancake, and right now we see pretty much every major vendor around the world in that trend. So we're continuing to be a trendsetter and innovator in this space.
It's interesting seeing how so you briefly showed off the Vive Flow, very nice plug there. With Nreal, you've also got the Nreal Air. So these are both very portable headsets. But I'd like to know how your different segments tie into the metaverse. Your users would most likely use the lightest available option to join the metaverse, or is it still for the more, I would say, maybe prosumer users who want the higher quality experience, the slightly more advanced but potentially bulkier units? Alvin, what do you think?
Yeah, so I think we actually, I feel like there's a lot of misunderstanding of what the metaverse is.
Sure.
And even by your question, you're saying to join the metaverse, assuming that the metaverse is already here. I think it's important to kind of set the stage and say, hey, the metaverse is something that is coming, and it's going to take 5 to 10 years for it to be realized in terms of having a fully interoperable open world concept where people can get into any device, whether a AR device or VR device, 2D screen, and be able to go into any of these 3D virtual worlds with a common ID with them. Right? That's really what the metaverse promises. And it's kind of the internet. It's not something so mysterious because a lot of people, everybody you talk to has a different definition. And I think the easy way to think about this, the metaverse is the 3D version of the internet that we've been building for the last 30 or 40 years. And it's mostly going to be consumed in the future in XR. In the near term, actually, most people will probably consume it on their PC, on their tablets, because that's what devices are out there in the world. But as time goes on, we'll see more and more people will migrate to a more immersive experience. Right. So I think that's something that I wanted to clarify in terms of at least having a common definition of what the metaverse is.
Alvin is certainly a very good. I don't know if evangelist is the right word, but you're definitely very good at being the gatekeeping on the definition here. Sushi, where does Nreal come in when it comes to the metaverse experience?
Well, I totally agree with Alvin about, I think, metaverse is, however you call that, it is like the 3D version of the internet. And internally, we would like to call that spatial internet. I think, that is kind of like the next internet. So we also think that's also like 5 to 10 years ahead of us. And we need to find out what is the best use cases for that kind of the internet. For example, if you look at the mobile internet, it also breaks down to different phases. At early stage, people only connecting to each other, like they use WeChat, they use WhatsApp. But in the later stage of the problem, we see a lot of video kind of content, like short video and the streaming services at the early stage of this spatial internet or 3D internet will be also more and more immersive kind of video contents all over the places. So that's still kind of like a kind of enhanced internet that you have more content, you have more high definition content around you. And in that sense, all the content is more likely and the interaction going to be more intelligent. So that's why we think VR and AR going forward is the pivoting kind of the portal, the next computing platform for this kind of content. So it's gonna take some time, but we really see some really increases that people love to use on a daily basis right now, like kind of productivity kind of contents. So if I think VR, AR in the near future, some good use cases that people would love to put decent time onto that. They have a very good chance, and slowly you're gonna see more and more content, kind of migrating from mobile universe, and you'll see more and more people using it.
Well, have you personally seen any memorable use cases so far?
Well, I would say, media consumption is already powerful kind of use cases. For example, say we always wanna enjoy a movie on the plane that have a kind of IMAX, and that's not actually existing, cell phone or any other devices can bring you except for VR and AR.
Okay, Alvin, what about you?
Yeah, so I don't want to say, is there a existing use case of the metaverse, right? But I think, well, maybe what you're asking is, what are some existing cases that relate to it? And a lot of people, I think, take the metaverse to be more probably the top social platform for XR today is and HTC is actually the biggest shareholder for VR chat. So we've been with them, involved with the operation for, and we've seen their growth. The one thing that's very interesting to note about them is, when we first invested, they were probably 90% of their users were PC users that were non-VR. And what we found is that over the last 2 or 3 years, it's actually been kind of a flip. It's now probably 70-80% of their users now are actually using XR devices, and only about 10 to 20% are using PCs. So we're seeing that as users start to use and see the benefits of a more immersive experience, and start to see the value of a full body tracked experience, they want to be able to have that first class citizen on a 2D device, and you can't move your arms and hands, and you can't jump and dance like the other people. You feel like, hey, I'm a second class citizen in this world. I need to express myself. And so I think that's actually a very good use case, because if you look at, this team is a team that was in the low single digits when we invested in them. Now they're probably in the dozens of people, but they have more active users than the Horizon world, which is powering it. Meta spent a lot of money to build it, right? And it's also a lot higher usage than things like these sandbox, which are seen as or being called metaverse platforms, but the reality of users on there, if you look at some of the stats recently, people are saying it's 1,000 users per day or 1,000 users per week on these Web3. So I think a lot of the platforms that call themselves metaverse today are not metaverse, more of a marketing term than a actual use case. So really helping the a Web3 platform, and also a metaverse platform, because I think that there's also a lot of conflict, and the blockchain solutions that call themselves metaverse, pretty much most of them are decentral platforms, and some are social platforms, but none of them are true metaverses, because they're walled garden systems, right? They're locked in, the users are locked into those systems, whatever property or land or avatars in those spaces. And that's not what the metaverse promises. The metaverse should be a place where you can easily jump between different worlds, and between different vendors, and between different devices. So it's important for us not to conflate the Web3 definition of the metaverse with I think, more longer term spatial internet that Shitsu and I have been talking about.
Okay, well, hold that thought for a second and ask if NWIL is currently working with any of those so-called metaverse at the moment, and then I'll jump back to Alpha.
Well, for us, I still think, us. So, but we are building a kind of a computing platform that is getting ready to more and more 3D contents. So I think initially, if you want to have a kind of platform really can hold those kind of, you go back down to the fundamentals, like, if you have a decent 3D display and 3D good sensing about the environment interaction. So if you have those 3 key elements, and you actually end up having a lot of customers use a new kind of platform compared to the cell phone, you're going to see more and more people migrating, a trend of people migrating from the mobile internet to the spatial internet or metaverse. So that's what we are focusing right now, is how we a decent kind of computing platform that can track people, that can attract more and more people coming from the mobile internet. And we want the people to get rid of the cell phone right away, because that's what people been using for the last 15 years. So we want to what they've been using for the last decades, that we give them an enhanced kind of experience when they plug our glasses onto their cell phone. That's how Unreal Air has been working. Is we have a really handy kind of glasses that you can easily a cell phone, or even some other computing units like Xbox or a laptop. It isn't 3D display in front of you and has much better resolution color compared to previous kind of headsets. Once people get used to that, you're gonna see more and more 3D contents gonna flow in, and that thing gonna drives and cracks, I guess, the first kind of a customer for the 3D, others gonna follow.
Can you, sorry, what do you mean by 3D display though? Are you talking about specific experience, or are you talking about specific 3D display technologies?
Okay, so we're talking about near eye displays, right? Compared to the display technology we've been using for the cell phones, for the TV headsets, for the TVs, right? The AR and the VR, we have to display, true 3D contents. So that means the both eye gonna actually display slightly different contents, and making sure that it's very accurate. Actually, require more kind of it actually is more complicated kind of brand new optical display engine that is driving the entire thing out of this. And so that's, we think, what compares to the traditional 2D flat screen type of building something slightly different.
Yeah, so maybe I can add to that display and 3D content perspective. There's definitely the left and right eye having the parallax, but I think beyond that is the ability to actually move in a 3D space and have it be real-time rendered. And so you're able to see, let's say the back of an object you're looking at, or being able to move around in a larger 3D space. I think that in video today. It's ability that you don't, get even with a 3D TV or 3D movie, is really being in a fixed place. So the ability to move around and have that 6 degrees of freedom, I think that's really aspects of what the future metaverse will allow you to provide to people, because then you have an immersive experience. And when you have an immersive experience, you're actually creating in your brain real memories that are very similar to the type of things that you provide or create when you go and do things in the real world. And better, it allows you to appreciate the content better, and it allows you to connect better with people with social spaces. So having that ability to spatially recognize the space, spatially recognize other people, to be able to is actually very underrated. Its value to deliver information to an audience.
I can also imagine that being a critical component for your VR training experiences. That could become a potential commercial use case in the metaverse, I guess.
Sure. I think training has been a consistent VR use case for the last 7-8 years since we started products. But I think the concept of really educating in general, whether it's training for children's education or adult education, there's really no other medium that is more effective, a full brain learning experience outside of actually physically doing it in the real world. So having that and creating actually muscle memory and creating actual, right? I'll give you an example. We recently did a study in terms of safety training for construction workers. And one of the tests that they had was, when you walk outside of a covered area, you always look up first. And we would actually have a virtual object drop on this cup, right? And if they look up, then they see it dropping, and they can back up a little bit. And what the testers wanted to show was, does this training translate to real behavior on the construction zone after they get out? And had people who did these training and ones who were just given kind of verbal training with an instructor, and more effective in terms of getting people to practice that it once they saw something fall on them, and they would insight by jumping back, right? So I think this is something that no matter what type of training we've been working with the police department in the U.S. With Axon. They're the guys who make the taser devices. So we actually put a tracker onto these tasers, on a physical taser. So they train the muscle memory of holding these devices, triggers and buttons and loading, and all these things happen. And they get put into a virtual scenario of how, when they, and also to be on the other side of that taser, so that they feel the empathy for the people.
Wow.
So I think those are the kind of things that need to be understood in terms of the value of having an immersive training, in terms of changing attitude and then changing behavior from that attitude.
Wow, that's very interesting. Actually, this is probably my first time hearing about the taser being, taser training being part of the, and so Sushi, I've actually been meaning to me, it seems like Nreal is still mainly targeting the consumer market, but I was wondering if maybe you are working with in the B2B segment as well, on maybe things related to training or things like that, or retail.
Okay, so first of all, we still put some effort into beyond the consumer market. It is, when we build our own hardware, it's like our focusing is building a hard consumer use cases. But in the meantime, we believe those hardware, they're good enough for a lot of trading or some other kind of B2B use cases as well. So for instance, Play, we do realize with 6-hour tracking, it became a great kind of computing platform for some museum. They have some arts media they want to showcase, and for other kind of interacting sites in Tokyo, where you can see dinosaurs with the glasses, and the existing materials in the museum, everything became more vivid, and actually the kids really loves that, because this is like the first interactive way you can play with the dinosaurs, and that's something I think is really good. And you see a lot of use cases where people, when putting the glasses on the same scene, instantly you kind of flash back to with the vintage people kind of showing up at the same places, and you kind of like deja vu, right? And those kind of use cases, they are actually using real light, which is a kind of device is dedicated for the consumer, but you can still see a very deep.
And those were used by museums, shops, or just regular? Okay.
Well, we actually end up around the world. They are actually gathering together and try to figure out what are the new use cases that we can get out of the VR and AR in general.
I see. Now, Alvin, let's go back to the metaverse, so to speak, very briefly. You spoke about how a true metaverse should be totally interoperable, right? And it should not be wall guarded, right? So HTC has, so Alvin, can you tell us more about what HTC is trying to achieve by having its own, metaverse platform? Like, what are you trying to achieve with this your platform that I guess it's a metaverse experience?
Yeah, so actually, I think it's important to point out that Viverse is not necessarily kind of the wall garden platforms that people are looking at. What we're actually creating is the tool set allow content creators to create their own platforms and to have a more standardized model for content creators and users to cooperate. And it's built actually on OpenXR and WebXR, which means that you can take any browser on any device and be able to go on there and interact, and it can actually destination, right? Just like the internet right now, if I go to a website and I click a link, I can jump to another website. I don't have to re-log in. I don't have to create a new ID. I don't have to change devices. We're trying to set an example of what we believe a more open, interoperable metaverse should feel and look like, and a portable avatar system using the VRM standard, so that once you have your avatar, you can bring it with you to different locations. Then they don't have to re-register. They don't have to create another avatar when they go somewhere, right? So those are the kind of things, and we also allow for currency and wallet logins across whether it's cryptocurrency or fiat currency, right? So what we're doing is to create the toolkits to enable people to build towards this metaverse, interoperable open metaverse. We're not trying to create another closed wall garden that a lot of platforms to do. And I think from a company perspective, I fully understand why these companies want to create closed platforms, because that's the best way to kind of capture the value of their customer. But if we look at and you see when the internet started, there's wall gardens like AOL, which all call themselves internet solutions, right, or platforms, and you see that they've all disappeared, right? So an open interoperable type of a network is always going to be more valuable than closed systems. But that also delivers the most value to the users and to the world in general. So to create a system that captures all the value short term, what we would like to do is to enable to have the greatest value, the greatest public good, because I feel like the metaverse is a public good, and we should try to do our part to enable that to happen. And we're working with all of the standards organizations around the world to help get people to come to a standard as quick as possible, so that we, on the internet, we have things like TCP/IP and DNS and SMTL and all these things, so that HTML, you can have very consistent content creation and very consistent mobility between and also very consistent packet delivery between different networks, right? And I think those are the kind of things to happen also to make the metaverse that we would like to see.
But has this been, if you're able to list out some of the main obstacles to
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always challenging to get hundreds of companies and also policy makers to agree on anything, right? Even getting a company within internally to agree on something can be difficult, but getting multiple companies with multiple and interests to agree on something is very difficult. But I think the good thing is that markets will push us towards this open metaverse, because I don't know if you know Metcalfe's law. It's the value of a network is the square of its nodes, right? And so that's true for a regular kind of local area network. It's also true for the internet, and it will be true for the metaverse. So as we create a more interoperable world, the number of nodes and the number of users are going to be significantly higher, and that's significantly where that number. So a million person world versus a 10 million person, it's not going to be 10 times more. It's going to be 100 times more valuable, right? So more of these companies will want to be part of this open metaverse over time, and these forces, it will take time, but these forces will bring them together.
Cool. Now, Sushi, you Obviously, you being the CEO of the company, I would imagine you personally have to talk to people from the US and well, I was wondering if you've discussed with them about this upcoming metaverse experience, world, so to speak. I was wondering if you observed any differences between the way these different countries or different audiences what the metaverse is meant to be.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think, I would say not only Japan and US and China, when even you talk to, South Korea and different country, they have different policies. And, I think, all of them really a really big opportunity for their country to build a kind of a new force of the economies. So different countries, and that's why you see the markets actually are for example, if you look at South Korea, I think they're being really aggressive. And not surprisingly, because if you look at three or other kind of innovations, South Korea always are leading the way. And in China, they are a much bigger market, so they're being more cautious. And especially, in China, when you're talking about it is very early stage, and both the government and the market are taking that. They don't want to. You see, some companies are taking ahead of, taking actions ahead of time, but you still companies, they are just, holding for now and trying to wait the right opportunity to jump in. You actually see more and more companies are starting investing in this area already, and you actually see more and more companies are actually getting into the metaverse by starting off with building a good AR and VR headset. And just acquired a Pickle last year. I think that kind of make a very strong statement for them to get into this industry. And the first job they are trying to do is building a decent VR headset.
Sure, Alvin will agree to that. So which of these regions would you say would have the biggest market, and be it metaverse or the precursor to the metaverse at the moment? You mentioned countries just now. I guess South Korea my guess would be South Korea if you were saying they're very ahead of the game, ahead of the curve. But is that the case?
I actually think that we're actually having this conference in Macau, or should be in Macau, in the China region, and I really believe that China will probably be the first market globally, a nationwide, billion-person metaverse experience available to its population, and there's multiple reasons why that is, and I think that one of the biggest reasons is the interest of the government to actually support. Right? If you look at what's happening in pretty much everywhere else in the world, the standardization and is all happening in the private sector, right? So it's standards organization trying to get hundreds of companies to agree on something, which I just mentioned was very difficult. But in China, what's happening is that from a national level, from provincial level, and from a city level initiatives, where the country will spend billions of dollars or more, or tens of billions of dollars, to incentivize, to accelerate, and maybe in particular regions or particular cities, but to get people to coalesce around this theme and develop new innovations and use. And I think one of the good things about China, that the users, is that they're very willing to adopt new technologies. If you see what's 10 or 15 years with mobile payments, with mobile social, with electric vehicles, etc. The adoption of these technologies happens first in China, and happens scale. And what we're going to find is that will be able to deliver that, and they will be able to enforce it so that the companies common standard. And the good thing is that there is already a lot of standards currently available in China that isn't available. So, for instance, we have a unified ID system in China, the 身份证 or lot number, and that's what people use the 实名制, right? So there's a real name login for almost all the websites and social in China. It's already there. You've already gotten a common ID system across all of the sites. You have a common currency system. In the rest of the world, you're debating, should I use Ethereum or Solana or Bitcoin or US dollar or whatever as the currency. And in China, it's going to be right. So that you've solved the currency and the finance issue. You also have the most advanced network in the world in terms of 5G and gigabit Ethernet to the home and fiber to the home. It's deployed better here than pretty much anywhere else in the world. Maybe in a smaller scale in South Korea probably has also very good networks. But 60% of all towers in the world, 5G towers, are in China. Right? So I think those kind of conditions are making China very, very ready to deploy these kind of networks, and the carriers have a real incentive to support that to happen. Right? The government has an incentive, and it's part of the 14th five-year plan. It's part of all of these city initiatives. There's I think 20 plus cities or provinces that have metaverse initiatives already. And so these kind of things just are not happening in the rest of the world. So when you can get rid of the aspects and the technical aspects that are the obstacles to creating a interoperable metaverse, I think China definitely has the right conditions for it to enable it to happen. And when you have something that has 1 billion people into this virtual space where you can jump around worlds, you learn a lot. You learn behaviors, you learn new business models, you learn new devices that people will need, right? And that's why if you look at the internet space in the last 10 years, a lot of that's been happening in China, because China's been able to get that person type of a mobile internet and mobile payment system that isn't available in the rest of the world.
That's a very good point. Sushi, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, actually, I can't agree more on that. China has the right, in several aspects. If you look at, compared to 15 years ago, right now in the supply chain, in the talent, in the market size and the policy, I think one of the great potential market for Metaverse, being a network where billions of people can be in it. I think, China definitely has a unique opportunity to be leading this industry. And but I also want to say this is also, again, for us, and how we actually going to evolve from today to that leaves a lot of new questions and opportunities as well. Usually, the competition in China market is also, spicier compared to other countries, in my opinion. It might take several iterations before we finally get to the stage where we feel comfortable, maybe in the future. So, but it's really, I think it's very exciting times for us, and it's a company right now in this industry. I think it's a good thing for us.
Very good. I think that would be us to wrap up this panel. Once again, Alvin, Sushi, thank you so much for joining us today, and I look forward to in person in the very near future. Okay,
yeah,
bye.
Thank you, Richard, and
Thank you for having us.
AI 嘛，太了解人工智能，
自动驾驶嘛，
无人机售卖的商店，送餐的 最近比较火的 AI 的作画。
美颜相机，希望人工智能可以帮我找到男朋友。
就 AlphaGo 打败了那个就是柯洁是吗？
是奥特曼吗？是外星人。
快递智能分拣吧，
智能家居，
按就什么都可以啦。
人工智能，哦，电商的，他们懂。
人工智能
是公司再大也不会迷路哦。
是不碰电脑做 PPT。
是东西丢了，瞬间找回。
是自己锻炼，姿势也能到位。
是随时随地来一场人机对决。
马后炮，将军。
还远远不止这些，让我们换些空间，人工智能拥有更广阔的舞台。
人工智能是更高效的运维工具。作为南北交通大动脉的京沪高铁，安全运行是我们的头等大事。
最初我们每一颗螺丝一颗螺丝的排查，光靠人工完成一次全线巡检的话，需要整整3年。
后来有了以拍照代替人工巡检，但仍需要依赖纯人工去分析判断。现在通过我们和商汤合作打造的星空系统，由 AI 批量分析，只要符合一些问题照片就能快速搞定。全线巡检从原来的3年。
人工智能是更懂你的驾乘体验。广汽传祺影库车型全新升级的 Artigo Space， 基于商汤绝影极致的 AI 感知算法，聚焦座舱核心场景，精准感知驾驶员的疲劳、分神、手势等行为，通过有趣温暖的人机交互，带来人机合一、极致懂你的驾乘体验。
超贴心，
超有安全感。
人工智能是更领先的出行。商汤 AI 加 AR 可视化技术，让小巴秒变时空博物馆，带你感受 L 体验虚实结合的未来城市。出行可以多奇妙！
人工智能是更具个性化的社交体验，作为一款主打虚拟3D 形象元宇宙社交平台，逐步完善千人千面的元宇宙社交形态。商汤人工智能提供精准的人脸扫描技术，帮助用户实现自己形象，最终可以在载着 Petal 沉浸式体验元宇宙社交的快。
人工智能是更高效的陪诊助手。新华医院针对患者纠结、排队等候时间较长等痛点，在商汤科技全力支持下，打造了智慧陪诊助手，提供智能分流、院内实景 AR 导航等多种功能，为患者提供了更为便捷的就医服务。
就医流程超便捷，从此告别排长队。
人工智能是传递文化的新路径。5年故宫日历借助科技1:1高精度还原故宫文物，让国宝走进千家万户。
人工智能是更好的观赛体验。商汤赋能科技冬奥，为冰壶比赛打造冰壶运动轨迹捕捉技术，精准还原超远距离下的冰壶运动轨迹，让观众更容易了解到冰壶运动的精髓。轻松感。
人工智能是更聪明的管理方式。商汤方舟城市开放平台完善城市的数字化转型，以上千种 AI 模型实时分析物理世界数据、事件告警和管理行动。
人工智能是未来企业的超级员工，在全面数字化和智能化的大背景下，商汤 AI 数字人是面向未来行业的创新升级。
未来，期待与您合作。
人工智能是什么？没有标准答案，